Welcome everybody to the first Friday call with K-State Research and Extension. We've got a fabulous call for you today, and I'm not going to take long before we start. If this is your first time, then let me just tell you that the purpose of this call is to increase the local community's knowledge of the experts, education, and economic resources available to help small businesses and the communities who love them. And having a great place to live is a great place to foster a wonderful business environment. So Elizabeth Berger, with the Vice President of this and Senior Program Officer of the Sunflower Foundation, has brought a team of panelists with her today, and she will introduce them as appropriate. But Elizabeth, take it away.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Nancy. We have a jam-packed hour, and I do have some dense slides on a few of them, and I'm going to blow through, but as a reminder to everyone, these are always archived, so you can go back and look again. I am excited to talk trails with you today, specifically about using them to bring visitors to town, and I do want to keep you awake and on your toes. So with every slide where I show a trail, it's a trail in Kansas, I'm not telling you where. If you can guess which trail it is, put it in the chat box. And then while the other speakers are discussing their knowledge, I'll go through the chat box and see who did the best in guessing the trail. So go ahead and guess this one right now. And as you're doing that, let me tell you just briefly who I am and where I come from. Most of you probably know me already, Sunflower Foundation, where I work. We are a health foundation, not a trail foundation. We are a statewide health philanthropy with a mission to serve as a catalyst to improve the health and well-being of Kansas. We invest in a variety of areas: public health, mental health, access to healthcare services, but a big focus is on the built environment, increased access to healthy, affordable food, and increased access to green spaces and nature with walkable, bikeable communities with public trails. And as you see there on the slide, we also operate a nonprofit education center using the old and renovated Miniger campus in Topeka. Although we're in Topeka, we serve all 105 counties, just like Research and Extension. Okay, as I'm talking, guess this trail. We could not do the work we do without our grantees and partners. And over the last 16 years, we've been able to support more than 200 trail projects in 80 different counties, thanks to you all. And we have learned so much. In the beginning, we just thought, oh, trails, that would be good if we want people to go outside and get some physical activity. Of course, we know since then, we have the research about the physical and health benefits of outdoor activity and exercise, as well as the positive effects on your mental health, really growing research there. We've also learned from you, our grantees, and the research supports the community pride, the quality of life, the social cohesion. In trails, we were talking about this just before the call, really a great equalizer. Now, not every trail suits everyone, but very few things you'll find as a public asset that fits people of all ages, incomes, abilities, and backgrounds. And there is a source for all this information down there at the bottom, and lots more where that came from. But we are here today to talk about the fifth benefit: economic potential, attracting tourists and residents and visitors to your community using the trail. Now, there's not the trail in this photo here, it's behind, but guess what town this is and where these hungry bikers are headed to next to get a bite to eat. Okay, I want to have a disclaimer here. I'm not an expert. Everything I learn is from YouTube. I have a lot of useless letters behind my name, which means I like to research. So everything I'm going to say is not my opinion. It is all evidence-based from either what's in the literature or what you all have taught me as grantees and partners. Now, you don't need to guess this photo. Obvious, we're at the State House on Trail Appreciation Day 2020. We hope to bring that back in 2023, COVID permitting. Great time to network with local and state lawmakers and tell them why trails are important to us. You can't guess this one either. It's pretty easy. It's right up there. And I would like to thank Trent McCohen with Wildlife and Parks for this photo. He is a great champion of trails. The word of the day, my friends, active tourism. Now, those of you that work in tourism, you're probably familiar with this and shaking your head and saying, I could be doing this webinar, Elizabeth. I get it. So just bear with me. Hopefully I won't screw this up. I've been reading a lot about active tourism. And when we say that, we're not just talking about active in terms of your body. That is part of it. But at the forefront, it's a more holistic and authentic way of traveling. It's respect for the natural surroundings, appreciation for the local community and residents, and an authenticity to the experience itself. It's moving and involving your body, your mind, and your attitude to fully reap the benefits. This is from a website called Active Tourism. And I'll tell you, unfortunately, it's not a great website, but I do love this graphic, so I want to give them credit. When you think about what are the components of active tourism, first, we have the recreation, relaxing the mind and recharging the body with, this is important, self-selected physical activity in an outdoor setting. Now, make sure you guess where this is. What could be a better place for that than a trail? The second component is education. It incorporates aspects of, again, self-selected, what you want to learn about by building and personally enriching your mind about a place's unique history, the story, the culture, and the added benefit of being able to sort of move your body as you're learning or as interspersed within is really a bonus. And note the trail here by a historic site in Kansas, pretty famous one. So make sure you guess that one. And benefits. This is what's really cool about active tourism. It is a bi-directional collective understanding between tourists and the community. It's not transactional. It benefits the tourists, but it benefits the local economy as well. And it benefits us all by increasing appreciation for our fellow Americans in the places in which they live. As opposed to what you see on here, what would be called mass or sometimes passive tourism. And no one is saying that is bad, it's just different. That is a little more transactional in many ways. Active tourism is really about authentic relationship building with the environment, with the community, and with the trail in this case that you may be visiting. Now you'll see here the stars. The blue one, adventure tourism, if you think about wild mountain bike riding or maybe the Unbound gravel event, that's fine, nothing against that. But not every community is suited to do that. But I can't think of a community in Kansas that could not fit those other three gold stars in terms of what they can do. And again, back to this, no slam on these guys on the left. And I love the way Leland talks about it. Not every community is suited to do a huge event. And guess what? You don't have to. And guess what? That's actually not where the most money is going to come from over time. I love this photo of the guys on the right. It is the Bike Across Kansas. Now, I don't know where it is. So if you know where it is, let me know. It's Western Kansas somewhere. But these guys, they're not there for the competition. They're there for the experience of not only the bike ride, but the night that they'll spend in the town, eating food, drinking beer, sleeping somewhere, buying stuff to put on their bike, and then wish they hadn't because it's added the weight. I want to encourage everyone to take advantage of what's being called in the travel industry, and those of you who are experts know this, kind of the COVID effect. It's kind of a little bit paradoxical. People are ripe and ready to get out and travel. Yay! Then they realize, oh, I've forgotten how much air travel sucks. And it's gotten harder. Tight labor market, inflation, it's more expensive. Customer service is not maybe what it should be. People are still looking for a more relaxed experience closer to home, whether in their home state of Kansas or let's take advantage of those around Kansas that might want to drive in. And speaking of where you might want to go, take a guess where this is, but I'm going to need to tell you, here is the epitome of active tourism in Humboldt at Base Camp. And I'm going to do 2 promos here, everyone. All right, you've probably heard about Base Camp, beautiful outdoor recreation area right next to the Southwind Trail, right next to the town of Humboldt, which is being re-energized with new businesses. If you want to learn more how that happened, Kansas Sampler Foundation is doing a duologue on September 13th. So reach out to them if you want to learn more about that. I also want to really put a plug in for KDOT, which just released its Active Tourism Toolkit this summer. It is a wonderful, useful resource. I've been through it all. Go to their website, download it for free. Lots of practical stuff in there, way more than I can tell you. Another resource, because I love to point you to resources, to think more about tourism. Go to the Kansas State Parks economic analysis, and there's the hyperlink, or just type it in the search engine. A couple of things here I want to pull out about the impact of tourism. Is usually felt within 40 miles of the state park visited, and 67% of their spending is near that destination. Now, just substitute trail for state park. I want you to think about this information as transferable. I realize state parks and trails aren't exactly the same, but they are in that they offer an opportunity for outdoor recreation, and then your town can do the rest to fill in the gaps. The other thing I wanted to point out is look at the benefits that people stressed for why they went there. Again, this is all something a trail can offer. And look again about how this is consistent among baby boomers, Generation X, and millennials. Now, I realize Gen Z is not in there, but we have a Gen Z on the panel, so she'll talk about that. And finally, I wanted to point you to, I promised you some dense, heavy slides, and guess what? I'm going to blow through them fast, because you need to go to Bicycle Tourism website, where they have pretty much anything I could tell you to do about how to market your town to active tourists. It helps ask some good questions, starting from where you are. You're going to hear this when I talk about Marysville, developing routes, services, and itineraries. People like curated experiences. They want to have choice, but we make so many decisions already. We kind of like to have things laid out for us, and then we can pick. You want to have a welcoming environment in every sense of the word, and Leland will talk a little bit more about that. And finally, you want to tell the world with social media and other means, and Gabby will talk to us about that. I wanted to plug 2 more things here. Everything on here is free. I just want to make sure that after this webinar, you can think, God, Elizabeth didn't really tell me anything I didn't already know, but she did point me to some good resources. This was a wonderful speaker we had at the Powered by Trails Day in April. You can find her presentation on creating a trail town on our Sunflower Foundation YouTube channel. It's kind of sad, we only have 32 subscribers, so please subscribe. We also have another great presentation on using data to, again, reap the benefits of tourists and visitors coming to your town. And there's a great story there about the town of Ottawa. And I want to point you to just one more. This is actually not a success story. This is a story of how success has eluded the poor community of Oric, California for the last half century. This is a town at the foothills of the Redwood National Park, some of the most beautiful places on the earth. And they have not been able to optimize that to become a tourist destination. I think this is not to rip on Oric. It's to, I think we learn from what doesn't work, even more from what we learn what does work. So I would greatly encourage you to check out Planet Money. It's about a 14-minute story, and it is very illuminating and things to think about what we should do in Kansas to make sure that we do not squander the beautiful natural resources that we have here. Mountain bikers, gravel cyclers, regular Blow Joe bikers, hikers, equestrians, crazy people who run ultra marathons. We have the opportunity to do it all. And wow, I stayed almost on time. I want to thank you, and I want to thank Trent McCohen for this fantastic photo. And don't forget about our Bambis. At this point, I am going to transition to Mike. And while he is pulling up his screen, I'll tell you a little bit about what you just saw on that last photo. Nothing we are doing is new or original. That photo was from 1885. The Wichita wheelmen who were getting on their bikes to bike to Hutchinson, and they put it in the newspaper. That was Facebook in the day. So at this point, looks like you're ready to go, Mike.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you for inviting me to talk about what we're doing here in Osawatomie and what maybe you can do in your community or county or region when you're thinking about trails and tourism. I threw up my favorite quote on this opening slide at the very top. I've been a city manager, town manager, city administrator now for 30 years, working in Missouri, Kansas, and Colorado. And it's never truer than when you're in a rural Kansas community, because those chords stand out and you can see how they're connected to everything that you're working on and how important those chords are to the community. And I will tell you, we tug and pull on chords, and sometimes we don't realize what they're connected to. So what I'm going to show you is basically 9 slides that sort of, how can you take a trail and turn it into that tourism experience that can benefit your community. So that active tourism slide that Elizabeth showed you about halfway through with the 3 gold stars on the left, that's everything we're working on. So as you look at the slides and you see what we're talking about, you'll see how they kind of connect back to that. Osawatomie, home of John Brown, the John Brown Cabin, the John Brown State Park. It has been here since 1917. So if you have an urge to learn more about John Brown, please come visit our community. That would be that cultural historic piece. Make sure you use the Flint Hills Trail. It's 118 miles. You can jump on it and get here and then visit John Brown Museum. And while you're here, please stay downtown and visit our restaurants. That's how Trails to Tourism works. I'm going to call it the Osawatomie Experience. Can we make it bigger? Will the community participate? And then I've left some time for questions, but those might be better left to the very end. The Osawatomie Experience. We are on the 8th longest linear trail in the United States. And our goal is to turn it into a tourist destination for Osawatomie. And the goal is to increase our pull factor. The state of Kansas actually tracks sales tax throughout the state, and they give each community and county a pull factor, meaning that are you losing or gaining sales tax based on the people that are visiting your community? And if you have a 1, that means anything that you're losing is being made up by people visiting your community. If you're below 1, that means you're losing sales tax, meaning your community is going outside of your boundaries to buy things. The pull factor in Osawatomie is 0.36, meaning that our citizens leave our community and they go to other places to spend their money. So we're trying to figure out how to reverse that, and tourism and bringing people into our community, we believe, will be one of those things. If you're on a trail, you've got to build the destination, and the destination doesn't have to be expensive. And that's the first thing that I would tell any rural Kansas community that's on the trail. At the top left, that picture is a bathroom shelter at Basalt High School. I used to be the town manager of Basalt, Colorado. This is on the Rio Grande Trail that connects Aspen to Glenwood Springs. It's probably one of the most popular trails in Colorado and certainly on the western slope. That is a very simple and cheap design. I took that same simple and cheap design and said, we need to make it a little more than just a bathroom. Can I turn it into a bathroom and trash? Because I'm going to need to be able to take and collect trash when people are visiting the trail, and they're going to need a bathroom. So can I build a facility that will do both? And that's what you see. We just basically took something that I had seen in another place, transported it here, and built it. That's a $2,500 design. That's not expensive. The next, probably one of the more famous set of stations along trail you'll find on the Katy Trail. I called the Missouri Department of Conservation and Parks and I said, hey, can you send me over your design for your station? I would like to copy if that's okay. I've had a local architect. He reverse engineered it for $2,500. I found a grant from the Olathe Medical Foundation here. I had contributions from the Sunflower Foundation from Miami County, and we created that same station. I have those plans. I actually have plans for stations that are 1/2 and 1/3 that size that I will give to communities if you want to build a station on your trail or at your trailhead. You'll see mile 0 right below where it says Osawatomie, Kansas. We are mile 0 on the Flint Hills Trail. The Flint Hills Trail starts in our community. We needed to find seating, and it had to be seating that we didn't have to maintain along the trail. So with the help of a local rock yard, I said, I need pieces of limestone. I need them cut to these dimensions. Can you put about 7 of them out along the trail from our mile 0 all the way towards Rantoul and then Ottawa? The good news with the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks, they have never told me no when I've tried to add something to the trail or create an amenity or just a rest stop, which this is. I would love to tell you this is an original idea. This is an idea I stole from the Empire State Trail in New York, and you can see what they did right above. So the idea is you don't need the wooden bench. You don't need to cut down trees and try to build a bench. We have a lot of natural limestone just laying around in Kansas, and they make perfect benches for trails. Can we make it bigger? So it's not just about creating our destination. Can we create a trail experience for people that are coming to our community that is bigger and broader than we might think? So what you're seeing is an ultra marathon, and I think it's Midwest Endurance Race Company, and they do ultra events. So 50-kilometer races, 20-milers. I want to say this fall they're looking to do 100-kilometer, which I'm going to guess goes way past Pomona, with the idea that you're bringing people, and this would be that active person that wants to use the trail and they want to time their race and they want to be out in nature, but they want to do these ultra endurance events. So that's one type of trail user. The next would be what Elizabeth was talking about in terms of cultural and historic. And the other thing that you have to think about when you're looking at trails is how can we include more communities along the trail in the activities that are occurring? And I basically took an idea from Colorado. So you're going to see on your screen, there are 4 communities that joined, and I think the last one was in May, and we are forming what's called the Kansas Association of Trail Towns. This copies something I've worked on and participated in Colorado, which was called the Colorado Association of Ski Towns, where we would work together because we had a lot of federal lands and we had a lot of legislative issues that were common to us in funding. So when I look at the Flint Hills Trail, I'm going like, we have 13 communities along it. We need to be working together for the benefit of the entire trail. As that trail improves in terms of its quality, so does that destination on the trail, which is our community. So the goal was with the Kansas Association of Trails Towns to start talking about how we leverage what we're calling a destination trail. So if you see at the bottom right, we're working on a destination trails economic impact project where we're going to actually do trail surveys and start monitoring the people that are using our trails. What are they using them for? Are there better ways that we can be selling our communities to the trail user? How do we pull them into our downtowns, our restaurants, and our businesses? And how can we collectively leverage this resource that we've been given? The next thing I will tell you, and I'm trying not to run too far, is that there are activities that communities can do that will make a difference, both in leveraging that trail and then also in creating community. And if I can just break for a second, and hopefully, Nancy, I got this set up right. Let me just check real quick. Looks so, I'm going to jump out and show you a quick video. Well, I thought I was. I'll send a link and you can look at it. And let me just back up. So one of our goals with our trail, and one of our goals in terms of looking and setting a world record, and I think we've sort of dialed into what we want to do. So you can, through the Guinness Book of World Records, apply to set a world record. We've verified that this record has not been set. And what we're looking to do is the longest soccer pass, and we want to do it 4 years in a row, culminating in the World Cup coming to Kansas City. So in the first year, we're going to have soccer players from Osawatomie Rantoul along the trail, and they will basically take that soccer ball and they will pass it, which is kicking it from player to player all the way to Rantoul. That's basically 10 miles. Year 2 will set another record and we'll go all the way to Ottawa. Year 3 will go all the way to Pomona, and that's 40 miles. And in the World Cup year, our goal is to have the longest soccer pass from Osawatomie to Harrington, Kansas, which would be 118 miles. The goal is over the years to build up the excitement in setting a world record and then to spread it out across the entire Flint Hills Trail and tie all of those communities into helping set that record. The most important part, I will tell you, and I've heard Leland talk about it a little bit before this started, is getting the community engaged in what it is that you're trying to do. The community has to believe that that trail and your investment in it as a community will make a difference, and they have to buy into it and they have to participate in it. So I call this my 100-foot story. I took these pictures this morning. So I got out of my car, and across the street was the Mile Zero bike rack that was conceived of by our assistant to the city manager, built by a local steel company, and paid for by a local donor. I walked across the street, and up on the light standard, you'll see the Flint Hills Trail banner. That banner was created by a local sign company that said they wanted to donate it back to the community and put it on our streetlights. The chair of my trail commission went to Colorado for 3 weeks to learn bike repair, came back, found 25 or 30 bikes, began to paint them. This is one he painted and placed in front of City Hall. We have about 40 painted bikes throughout the city, and a lot of them will have Flint Hills Trail things on them, paraphernalia, with the idea that we want to be a biking community that's tied to Mile Zero of the Flint Hills Trail. I didn't do that work. That's a community that started to believe that this trail can make a difference. Once you get community buy-in, I really don't think there's any limits to how far you can push it if you happen to be fortunate enough to be on one of these trails. I think the community starts picking up the work and they can make a difference. And with that, I'll turn it back to Elizabeth.
Thanks so much, Mike. And I apologize that I forgot to introduce you as the manager of Osawatomie. And I thought you were a transplant from Colorado, but little did I know you actually grew up in Kansas, snuck away to Colorado, and then came back here to share your enthusiasm and goodness with us. All right, I am going to now introduce, like he needs any introduction, Leland Danes from Emporia. There's nothing I can say that this guy can't say here for himself. So take it away, Leland.
Okay. Well, thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Mike. It was fantastic hearing everything you had to say there and all the things you guys have been doing. The Flint Hills Trail State Park does come through Lyon County, so we're excited to see the continued progress there. Okay, Elizabeth wanted me to introduce myself. I don't want to take up too much time, but I do want to share some of my experiences and some of the things that I've been doing, and then we'll dive into a couple of the topics we have here. My day job currently is director of Visit Emporia. I still own a bike shop here in town called Gravel City Adventure and Supply Company, and I'm the founder of and director of Emporia Spanish Speakers, a nonprofit that teaches Spanish language and cultural awareness in our community and a variety of advocacy projects and initiatives. Prior to that, I was one of the owners of Unbound Gravel, formerly known as Dirty Kanza. Many people might know by that name. And even prior to that, I worked out in Colorado for Lance Armstrong's former coach, and I was leading biking excursions all over the globe, from Chile and Argentina to Costa Rica, coast to coast, from California to North Carolina in the US, and even into Europe. And I share that to highlight the fact that I may be biased because I am an Emporia native, but I assure you folks, Kansas is every bit the worthwhile cycling destination that we believe it to be, and that we, in my opinion, have built it to become. But with the success of Unbound Gravel, and I guess before you transition, Elizabeth, well, that's fine. That picture is home. That's the Flint Hills. Kansas is just absolutely beautiful. And the whole state is filled with imagery such as this. And as Mike was talking about, as he was closing there, he said, if you're fortunate enough to be one of the towns along a trail such as this. And what I want to talk about is what happens when you're not fortunate enough to be on a trail such as that. Well, one avenue is to find ways to build a trail in and around your community. That's absolutely a viable option, and something that I would encourage most communities to look at. I'm an advocate for all avenues of riding bikes, whether it be on single track trails, converted rail beds or levee trails, or gravel roads. And this is the exciting thing about gravel. Not only is it extremely in demand, and Elizabeth, you can go ahead and go to the next picture here just to give some scale and perspective. It is in demand. This is from Unbound Gravel. That is about 2,000 of the 4,000 riders that are in town. Nearly 2,000 of them are lined up on Commercial Street, getting ready for a 200-mile adventure. It's highly in demand, but the good news for most of Kansas is it's extremely accessible to nearly every community. Gravel cycling is something that actually benefits rural Kansas far more than our more populated communities, simply because it's more difficult and logistically challenging to get out of the city centers and into the gravel. Another exciting part is the infrastructure is there. There is nothing that you need to build. There's nothing that you need to create, and virtually zero cost into developing gravel routes and marketing those into destination trails or routes in and of themselves. And so that's really part of an initiative that we've created called Gravel Kansas. A project we are currently working on is working with communities, educating them, inspiring them, and giving them the tools to create gravel cycling routes that connect people to place through storytelling. And that's, I think, at the heart of what gravel is. And I don't know if you can currently see my background with Elizabeth sharing the screen, but there's a picture of two guys lounging on a Shea lounge in the middle of a gravel road out here in Kansas. And that's, to me, at the heart of what this gravel cycling is. It's about connecting people to place. And the bicycle is a tool that allows them to connect to a place in a way that they simply couldn't do from the windshield of a vehicle. It's a very different experience. And so to me, that storytelling component is very important. It's not enough to simply create here's a square, here are some lines on a map, here are some gravel roads, come here and ride these. I think there is an extra dimension, and that's that storytelling. And that's sort of marketing 101. We want to communicate that our destinations are a place to come. It's through stories that we can share the story of our community, the history, the geography, the attractions, but also find that connection and relevancy with a potential tourist and a visitor. Those stories can manifest themselves in a few ways. They can be geographical. It can be a hill or a river or a natural cliff that you want to draw someone's attention to or take them by. It could be the natural landscape. It could be historical. It could be, Wyatt Earp out in Dodge City. It can be, to give you an example, right here in Emporia, one of our most popular routes is called Murder Ordained. If you're not familiar with Murder Ordained, it was turned into a movie, but it was a rather sad event in Emporia history. A local pastor and his mistress murdered their spouses. He'd murdered his wife and pushed her off of a bridge into the river. And that's a bit of a morbid story, but let's face it, most people are intrigued by the macabre. That event occurred in 1984. Well, that bridge is only a few miles outside of town. Our Murder Ordained route is only 13 miles, and it shares the story of not only that tragic event that occurred, but the historical bridge and the interesting architecture where that took place and that people go over. And at 13 miles, some of you may be thinking, that sounds crazy. I don't ride 1 mile, let alone 13. But for most of us, that's a very accessible distance. Many of you, you've probably heard the couch to 5K. In the cycling world, you can go couch to 10-mile ride. I'm not saying it won't hurt a little bit. It could be uncomfortable, but most of us are capable of getting off the couch and getting out the door and riding 10 miles, even if we haven't been riding or doing that activity. And so it's our most popular route because it is accessible, but also because, thanks, Elizabeth. Here's a picture of that bridge. And this is a great picture of, this is not a race. This is a group ride. This is kind of what this looks like when a group of friends come together to go ride these iconic routes. And so we've all heard the quote from Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. And I believe that is true. But again, I go back to, there is nothing for us to build here other than a route. I think Elizabeth mentioned earlier about curating those routes in a way, creating itineraries and opportunities that make it easy for a person. There will always be a population, a portion of the demographic that likes to choose their own adventure. They might want to simply land in a destination and make their own routes, go exploring on their own. I assure you, the vast majority of people want a route laid out for them. They want a story told. They want to know where they're going to park. They want to know where the amenities are. Can they get gas? Can they get something to eat? Can they fill up their water bottles? And then where am I going to go ride? They want that all laid out for them. And so if there's any work to be done, that's really the work. It's to create those stories. Most of you that live within your communities have been there for a while. You know those stories already. You know where you know what the historical stories may be. You know what the geographical draws are, and you know what your attractions are, like a world's largest ball of twine or Big Brutus steam shovel or electric shovel. Those types of things that might occur out along the gravel roads. And so, again, if there's work to be done, that's simply it. It's matching our stories with potential gravel routes and then communicating them. And that's what this Gravel Kansas initiative is really attempting to do, is create a singular website destination so that a user doesn't have to search the entire web all over Kansas trying to find where these routes may be. We want to make this simpler for communities, help promote these route attractions and these routes that you may create, and drive people to your communities. So I know I've got a split job here of talking about a different subject, and there will be opportunity for Q&A. So I want to switch gears for a second, move away from the world of gravel cycling and talk about trail access, public space access, even gravel cycling access. All of those things come together. I mentioned earlier that I'm a founder and director of Emporia Spanish Speakers. This is a nonprofit I created here in Emporia, selfishly, initially, because I wanted to develop my own Spanish language skills. I had been studying myself. I want to stay committed, and I need a group of people to practice with. In my journey of language learning, and now 6 years later, I consider myself fully bilingual, I've learned a great deal. And I've learned a lot about our Latino and our Spanish-speaking population right here in Emporia. First and foremost, it's pretty significant. Emporia is nearly 30% Hispanic today. That's almost 1 in 3. The other things I've learned in my journey of being able to communicate with people I wasn't previously able to communicate with is that they have a different perspective on how they can access things within the community. One of those things being public spaces, such as trails or public parks. And as a native-born American, someone who was born in the United States, who speaks the predominant language in English, I was kind of surprised by that sentiment, that they felt like they weren't welcomed and invited into these spaces, that they didn't know how to engage with them, because these were things I took for granted. You simply go to the park and you know how to use that space, or you show up at the trail. You can read the signage because it's in a language that I understand, and I know how to activate or act within that space. So when it became more and more obvious to me that a significant portion of our demographic who may not be comfortable with English language, and we have to keep in mind, even because someone can speak English, it doesn't mean that they can necessarily read or write English. There's various degrees of how a person can engage with a language. And when you go to a public space, the predominant way is to read notices or information. So that could still be a barrier. But what I've tried to do with that is try to break down those barriers, right? That's what we want to do. And we say, okay, what is needed in order to make this population group feel more welcome and invited to these spaces? There's a technical application which is simply translate. If there's written material within a park space, whether that be pamphlets and information at a kiosk, whether it be posted park regulations or hours, all of those things should, and in my opinion, must be both in English and Spanish. Now, I hone in on Spanish because that's the predominant language here in Emporia, would be the predominant second language in Kansas, and if you've been following census information throughout the US. If you have other languages that are prevalent within your community, I would encourage you to explore postings in multiple languages. It may increase the cost marginally because you might need a slightly larger sign, but at the end of the day, that's a very minor cost in order to make significant portions of our population feel educated, welcomed, and invited into this space. What does some of that education look like? You might be asking. Well, again, we take for granted when I go to the park, I may have had someone teach me, or I may have been able to read information on how to fish within a space. Do you need a license? Do you need a permit? Can you keep fish? How many? What are the curfew hours? Does the park close? I like to use the example of our friends over in Sweden. They have a national right to roam. Very progressive law that would be quite foreign to us. They are allowed to camp in any public space without notice. They can simply walk into a public park, whether it be municipality or out in a national park or something like that, and they can camp. No questions asked. Imagine they came over here and tried to camp in the city park here, beautiful Peter Pan Park right here in Emporia. They'd get in trouble for that. It's not allowed. So that's just one simple example of how cultural norms may differ. And if a person doesn't have the language skills to read the posted information, it can become a real barrier for them. So those are some simple ways. There's a lot of ways. I guess the last thing I'll kind of hint to that is posting information in multiple languages is simply one method. And personally, I don't believe that to be enough. I think that's the right first step. That's a good way to begin creating a welcoming environment within those public spaces. But I do believe it will take more than that. The other thing I've learned in my community, amongst the Latino community at large, is there's a general level of mistrust. And I do think there's going to be a need for considerable relationship building first and foremost. And key members of communities such as yourselves, I don't know you all, but I assume you're here because you're involved in your communities to some degree and some extent. That means getting out there and learning, being a bit of an investigative researcher like Elizabeth there, and ask questions, find connections, find people that can communicate between both communities that maybe have both language skills, maybe a second or third generation American-born, child or grandchild of an immigrant, and start to learn about what are the difficulties, what are the challenges, what are the pinch points, and really start to understand a little bit better the unique hurdles that members of your community may be facing when it comes to accessing those. Because I can assure you this, and Elizabeth talked about this at the top of the call, accessing our open air public spaces is a fundamental right to anyone that lives within our communities. And to think that there are members of our communities that don't feel comfortable engaging in those spaces is very disappointing. And I view the work as very important. And it's not just, my passion is currently working with that population group, but that access transcends to any user group that isn't like us, an able-bodied, English-speaking, American-born native. Elizabeth has done great work working with people with different abilities, for example, and how do someone in a wheelchair, for example, or limited mobility or aging populations, how do they all engage with space? What are the challenges and difficulties they face? So it's not just about Latino populations, it's any population group that would find difficulties in what we might take for granted sometimes because of the ease of access that we have to those public spaces. So it's an interesting conversation to think about. It's certainly meant to push you beyond your comfort level at times. That's a good thing, to feel uncomfortable once in a while. We need to listen to one another, to learn from others, and figure out how we can make our public spaces accessible and welcoming to all. So with that, I think I've about used my 15 minutes. I know we have one more presenter. Yeah, and I look forward to questions at the end.
That was perfect. And just one quick thing to add on to what Leland said, it's not only the right thing to do at a human level, but even if you just cared about dollars and cents, if you think about it, 1 out of 3 people in Kansas in the next 20 years will be Hispanic or Latino. That's $1 out of $3 that are not coming to your community to visit as a tourist unless we think about that. So this is not political. It's just an objective fact when we think about marketing our towns as trail tourism destinations. Really, really appreciate this conversation. Okay. I am trying to move to the next screen because I got a couple of other things to pull up here. Let's see if we can make this work. And then we're going to have Gabby come on board. I wanted to talk about, it looks like I'm going to have to go out and go back in. I wanted to mention really quickly the town of Marysville. Maureen was not able to be on the call today, but Marysville has done a fantastic job of marketing their community. Let's see, here we go. And I'm going to make this quick, Gabby, because I know you have a fantastic presentation for us. Okay, let's see if we can make this go now. Sorry, gratuitous trail photos coming up. Okay, so here we've got the town of Marysville, just about 12 miles south of the Nebraska border. Maureen Christ is with the Marshall County Connections and the Blue River Rail Trail. Beautiful trail. They were the first trail, I believe, in Kansas to have a covered bridge. And that covered bridge has probably been the location of more engagement and graduation photos and selfies than you can shake a stick at. That was one of the first things they did, and it's become somewhat iconic. Now, this is a trail that only 12 miles are in Kansas, but guess what? The next, I can't do the math, 63 miles go up to Lincoln. So really a prime spot for sort of cross trail traffic. And Marysville has really capitalized on that. Something Maureen wanted me to share with you guys today. I did not know this, probably some of you more savvy did. On Google Maps, there is a layer that gets down to details on biking tours. But guess what? It only does that if you initiate it. And so I can't tell you on this webinar how to do it, but I can tell you Avilo has a great little primer on their website of how to create a cycling route with Google Maps. That is free. That is promotion for your bike routes, your gravel roads that you wouldn't have before. And one quick thing about e-bikes, I know they can be a little controversial, but once again, just like with the different languages, it opens up a whole new demographic that can now bike through your community. Couple things that Maureen also wanted me to share. You need to think about promotion both in the hard way and in the soft way. So hard way being your actual signage, paper maps. Look right here, welcome to Marysville. They tell you where you can eat, where you can go, where you can sleep, what you can do. And then the soft way is social media, and Gabby will pick that up in a bit. I also wanted to mention real quick, this it's hard for a small town to have a hotel, right? And we used to be captive to did a Holiday Inn want to locate there. Airbnb and VRBO has changed that immensely. Trailhead Suites, this is right by the trail in Marysville. this is a prime entrepreneurial example. People don't want to stay in hotels if they're in active tourism. They want to stay somewhere local and authentic, and frankly, somewhere comfortable with some amenities, because typically the older traveler doesn't want to camp on the ground. But that's also the person that after a hard day's bike or ride, they want a good meal, a soft bed, and a stiff drink. So, and I could be wrong, but I think in 2023, there might be a first Friday on the entrepreneurship behind using residential lodging for commercial purposes like Airbnb. These photos are blurry, and that's really good. That's my husband and myself at Daniel Boone's old homestead. That's actually his own homestead. Those are replica cabins right off the Katy Trail. That was not cheap, my friends, but we did it specifically because it was a cool experience. And if I knew how to take a selfie, we might have put it on social media, but we're old and no one cares. So, but I'm showing you the photo today. My point is getting back to the promotion of your trail, and how do we get young people involved in this effort, both using the trails and helping us with the trails. That is something that we are going to ask a young person to do. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Gabrielle Talavera. Gabby, she's an intern at the Sunflower Foundation. She's been along with us for 6 to 8 months. We're thrilled to have her, and she's got a lot to share with you. Take it away, Gabby.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for that introduction. I'll just share my slides real quick. Yes, so my name is Gabrielle Talavera. Hopefully my slides, okay, there we go. My name is Gabrielle Talavera, and I have been interning with the Sunflower Foundation for about 8 months now. I am a Gen Zer. I am a senior at KU studying community health. And one of the first projects I did with the Sunflower Foundation was the Trail Champion cohort, which I know some of you might be familiar with. I've really come to understand and love the work you trail folks do. So we're going to be discussing targeted volunteer recruitment, and more specifically, targeting the youth. So to get started, you're going to have to prepare a good recruitment strategy. You'll need to consider the needs of your program and how those needs impact the population you want to reach. For example, what positions do you need? Are you looking for someone to do more physical labor, or are you looking for someone to do social media, help with special events? Is transport available? Do you have the means to transport your volunteers back and forth? If not, you're probably going to be looking for someone over the age of 16 with their own license. What kind of commitment are you looking to require? Is this only going to be an hour or two a week, or is this going to be something over 10 hours? Because that may not be feasible for some younger volunteers, but definitely could be for college students or older high school students. And additionally, how labor intensive is the work? You also need to be conscious of who your audience is. Who are you trying to reach? What motivates them? What are their interests? What do they know about your program? I recently learned something from a very similar webinar to this, specifically about engaging young volunteers. And it's basically that youth passions for certain causes are starting to shift. So when you think about normal volunteering opportunities, you may think about soup kitchens or food pantries. And data shows that the youth are becoming more and more passionate about environmental causes like land conservation, fair land use, and environmental activism, which is great news for you trail folks. Which brings me to this. If you're worried about a lack of passion about trails among young folks, do not be. This is a little snippet of a TikTok that went viral a few months ago. This user is a park ranger in Arizona, and this simple video is just showing trail maintenance, cleaning up before and afters. And it had over 1 million views and thousands of likes, and it was absolutely flooded with comments like these. How do you like this job? What do you do? This is one of my dream jobs. How do you get this job? So youth are really passionate about trails. Just a quick little overview of the planning recruitment process. Number one, as we talked about, identifying your needs. 2 is adjusting your message for the intended population. I'll talk about this in a minute, but language use is really important. 3, using technology if you feel confident enough to do so. That'll be really important for reaching the youth as well. And 4, meeting your population where they are. And what I mean by that is that it's time to really invest in a good social media presence. So where are the youth? Now that you know basically what they can do, where do you find them? And the short answer is social media. Facebook probably isn't going to be your best bet anymore, especially for younger folks. Data shows that they're flocking to platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and Reddit, as well as Twitter. For those of you who aren't familiar with TikTok, basically it's a video media outlet basically that uses an algorithm, which is kind of like a recommendation system to show users videos similar to media they already engage with on TikTok and other social media outlets. So, which is great news for you guys, because if you post trail related content on TikTok, it's going to show up in the feeds of users who engage with similar content already, which means they're more likely to engage with what you post. As for Instagram, it's a great platform for photos, but I also think it's a really great way to spread awareness and post your messages. For example, I know a lot of Lawrence nonprofits use Instagram as their main form of communication with their volunteers, whether it be kind of spreading awareness of volunteer opportunities or upcoming special events. Instagram is a really good place to start. As well as I would say it is the most beginner and user friendly. So it's a good starting place if you're not super tech savvy. Reddit is really good if you want to cast a wider net without having a large social media following already. In the screenshot below, you can see that's the Kansas forum on Reddit with over 50,000 members. It's something that you don't need followers for people to engage with your posts. You could easily make an account, post something now, and all 50,000 of those people can see what you post. And even specifically, there are certain cities that have their own Reddit forums. I know Kansas City has one, Salina has one, and Wichita does as well. Beyond social media, of course, you'll want to look in your community. And there are a lot of examples here, but I really want to focus on senior projects and college volunteer networks. When I was a senior in high school, we had Senior Service Day. And so all 500 of us students went out in our community and volunteered at different nonprofits. And I ended up staying as a long-term volunteer at the organization I was paired with. So I really recommend looking and pairing up with local high schools. As for college volunteer networks, a lot of students are going to be perusing those for volunteer opportunities. First of all, they want to get involved in their community, as well as they want to boost their resume and do some career development. So how can youth help now that you know where to find them? Really use them to your advantage. They can advertise for you. This is a crowd that grew up with technology. They're very tech savvy. They know how social media works. And having young folks run your social media for you really helps with recruiting other young folks. So for example, this screenshot to the right here is from my own Instagram feed. It's from LFK Eats, which is a downtown Lawrence food pantry, and it is completely run and managed by college students, which is how I heard about it from my peers. And I think what really helps is that young people know how to use language that's in or current slang and how to really pull in other young people to your cause. Young people aren't as concerned about pay as you may think. Of course, it's a good motivator and it's nice to be compensated for your time. But from what I've seen, the biggest motivators seem to be career development, flexibility in hours, and networking opportunities. So how do you go about actually recruiting the youth? I really recommend developing a robust social media plan and an updated website. I was doing a service learning project in the spring with a community garden program here in Lawrence. And we surveyed volunteers with the garden program and people who expressed interest in volunteering, but never actually end up getting involved. And what they said was the biggest inhibitor, they said, was an outdated website. So you really have to keep your website and other social media updated if you want people to come volunteer and get involved. Like I said, partnering with local schools and businesses is really important. As for businesses, where are the young people in your community? What businesses are they going to that you could partner with to gain more awareness for your program? And like I said, providing diverse volunteer opportunities. Not everything has to be just physical labor. This can also be recruiting young folks to run your social media, very important. So why are you doing all of this? What is the end goal here? There are a lot of reasons to engage youth. First of all, it provides funding at little to no cost on your end, and you have the opportunity to teach youth a life skill and get them to love nature. You'll also meet people with similar interests, but come from a variety of different backgrounds. You get to show them the value of volunteering. And I also think this last one is what's really important here, is you build sustainability and the future of your program when you get young people to volunteer with you, because as sad as it is, older volunteers can't always come in, and at a certain point they'll have to stop. So young volunteers are what's really going to build the future of your program. I have a couple of additional helpful resources here, a couple of articles. This first one I really recommend. Out of anything you look at, this first one is a webinar about engaging young volunteers. And the speaker does a wonderful job at kind of demonstrating what Gen Z is most passionate about and what their kind of background is. And I've included my email if you have any questions, as well as my name, and I'm happy to share this presentation with anyone who would like to review it on their own time. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Gabby. That was really fun to watch. And briefly, I'll just say, I really wanted Gabby to share that information with us today, because I know that as I was coming at you and Mike was coming at you and Leland's coming at you, we're throwing all these concepts and ideas of do, and you're sitting there thinking, but I'm listening to this webinar and already doing 99 different other things. Those are great ideas. I don't have time. There's a whole generation beneath us that have sometime the willingness to develop skills and life skills, and best of all, the knowledge of social media, which is native to them. And we are missing out if we don't tap into that for anything, but in particular, what we're trying to accomplish today, which is promote our towns and trails to visitors. So with that, Nancy, I will toss it back to you.
Wonderful, wonderful. What a great program. And I know that we're beyond time, but if you're still here and you have an urgent question that you really want to ask, I want to give you the opportunity to do that. Just giving us so many things to think about. So I put it in the chat I put it in the chat for all of you that next month's speaker is going to be on affordable moderate income housing, developing moderate income housing in your communities. And so if that is a problem for you, name a city that it is not. You might find that interesting and helpful. And with that, I'll go on. Okay. So there's a question directly to me. Is there a state level entity tracking banked rail corridors?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Is
there a state entity that's tracking banked rail corridors?
Oh, an entity that tracks them? The Surface Transportation Board is the one that actually provides the NITU, the Notice of Interim Use Agreement, as trails are rail banked. I worked with the Rail Trail Conservancy a couple years ago to get the list of ones that are rail banked in Kansas, because many of them have reverted back to landowner because it was pre-1983. And if you want to reach out to me directly, I can share that with you. That is not information that sometimes is best sort of like publicly out there because it can cause preemptive misunderstandings. So, but yes, the Surface Board, Transportation Board has that information. You could also personally reach out to the Rail Trail Conservancy, which tracks it all as well.
Good question. Great answer. Thanks. Will the Sunflowers Foundation be funding grants?
Be funding ramps.
Grants.
Oh, our Sunflower Builder, our Trail Builder program, which is the one that directly provides money to build trails, which has been going on since 2006. We typically release a request for proposal every 12 to 24 months. Depends on competing demands and frankly, staff capacity. Trail grants are pretty time consuming. We released an RFP last October. So we are hoping that in early, when I say early, first quarter or second quarter, definitely the first half of 2023 is when we'll be able to. You can reach out to me anytime. And I always tell people, if I don't answer your email the first time, please bug me again. Sometimes it just has to come up again. You all understand, I know. And email, please don't phone. The message will never get to me. Always email, it's best.
Good. Thank you so much. Okay, with that, I'm going to cut off the questions. Know that Elizabeth is accessible to all of us. And I'll leave you with the thought for today from author Margaret Wheatley. There is no power for change greater than a community discovering what it cares about. Thank you so much. Panelists, you've really added to our understanding and our thoughtfulness about trails today.